Hey, welcome in everybody. This is the Underground Runaround. I'm your host, Brad Ross, and our co-host is back with us again. Pav Daddy, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
What's going on?
Oh my gosh. So, the elephant in the room. There's an elephant. It's large. It's in the room. And it's this Hall of Fame vote we had yesterday. What the hell is going on with Hall of Fame?
I think the biggest issue is that David Ortiz is the only one that got in, right?
Right.
I think there will be people that make a case for David Ortiz, and that's all fine and dandy. I think the cases that can be made for other players, let alone the steroid guys we'll get into and all that, but there's so many guys that put up numbers that should be in if David Ortiz is getting into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I've never been so mad about being happy for a guy. Like, I'm happy for Ortiz. I'm glad he got in. He deserves it. I believe he should be there. Even as a career DH, there's no bitching being done about the fact that Ortiz is getting in. But it's exactly what you said. It's who's not getting in and just how blatantly wrong it is. It's just wrong. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. There's no defending it. And these writers get to hide behind the fact that they don't have to make their ballots public if they choose not to. So it's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. There's no way around it. I hate Barry Bonds. I don't like him. He was too good. He's better than everybody. He wasn't on my team. He was a complete asshole by all accounts. He wouldn't even give his rights to video games. He was Reggie Stocker in the baseball games. You know, that type of guy. Whatever that means, not the best human being. None of that matters. That man was absolutely next level, otherworldly at hitting baseballs and putting them a long, long ways away from home plate. And if you don't put that guy in the Hall of Fame, I mean, what are you doing? Every writer should be ashamed of themselves. Every writer that didn't vote for Bonds shouldn't be allowed to cover sports, period. You want to omit history because of a personal agenda or some bullshit? I don't understand it. I don't like the guy. I don't agree with what he did. We all know he used steroids, whatever. Balco, Clear, Cream, all that shit. He had his own laboratory, for crying out loud. Who cares? That doesn't put your eyes on the ball and take the bat to the ball. But everyone was doing it. There's a million arguments to make. We're going to run around all over this thing. And he should be in, along with others. I mean, we were talking before we started. A-Rod got more votes than Sammy Sosa. Sammy Sosa didn't even get convicted of a real steroids test. He failed the same test in 2003 that David Ortiz failed, that Manfred came to his aid and said, hey, this is not a real test. You know, we're still trying to figure out baselines and what was over the counter and what was legal and what was not. I can give you guys a quote later if we get back to it, but Sosa's only failed steroid test is the same one. His numbers are good enough. A-Rod gets more votes than him, and A-Rod had to sit out an entire year. Not to mention the fact that the baseball world or corporate America is totally fine with it too, because he does fucking ESPN shit. He does all the baseball commentary, which I think he's terrible at.
It's one of those things like,
and I don't like him. And he should still get in.
So, like the Baseball Hall of Fame was actually started as a way to get tourism to Cooperstown.
Sure.
Right. So, like who was it? It was the son of some rich bastard from back then. So he starts the Hall of Fame. All right, 1939 was the first induction, and they like how the Baseball Writers Association becomes the standard for deciding who gets into the Hall of Fame is pretty amazing in itself.
Let me cut you off, Pav. For everybody listening at home, you guys need to understand this before we go any further. This is exactly how the baseball writers get to vote or what they have to do to be able to vote. We don't know how they got to where they're at and what makes them the fucking authority, because I think it's an absolute joke, just like my hat. Didn't even want to look. People who are listening audio only will not understand what just happened, so I apologize for that. It says to vote, a baseball writer has to cover baseball for 10 consecutive years. So they gotta write for a team or for a corporation, or they have to cover baseball for 10 years. And they have to complete a registration and sign a code of conduct. Now, I tried to find whatever that code of conduct is last night because I would love to see what it is. Couldn't find it. That's what I want to know. What's on that code of conduct? Because I think if everyone who's not voting for some of these people looks in the mirror with unbiased thought, they're wrong. And they're not upholding their own code of conduct that they signed when they agreed to be able to vote for who gets in the Hall of Fame. The fact that they get to vote's stupid, but I just want everybody to know that they have to have 10 years of covering baseball consecutively. They're allowed to vote for up to 10 people. It can be 0. They don't have to vote for anybody, and they cannot vote for more than 10 people. They do not have to make their ballot public, so they get to hide. They don't even have to explain it. So they're probably not even qualified. Like, just because you write about a sport, does that make you knowledgeable about a sport? No. I could watch every Cubs game and write you a summary of every single Cubs game that I watched. But that doesn't give me any credibility on who's the greatest players of all time. It just means I watched a lot of baseball. It doesn't make me good at judging talent or scouting talent or assessing talent or any of those things. It just means you watched games. We could all write reports on the football games from the weekend. I mean, it doesn't give you any authority, but that's it. That's all you have to do. So if you wanna vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame and have an impact on the history of the game, all you have to do is cover baseball for 10 years. Go ahead and do it. You can vote. Pav, please continue. I'm sure I probably fucked you up, but I just want people to understand how stupid these guidelines are.
I mean, it's finally they got the Veterans Committee, and those guys have been bringing in some of these guys that weren't for obvious choices, but it's a wonder what the Veterans Committee will do with Bonds and those guys.
I mean, I think they have to do the right thing, whether they want to or not. I don't know their requirements. I don't know what they look at, but I do know that voting for the players in the Hall of Fame, and I wrote this shit down so I would be accurate when I said it. Players, this is what you're supposed to analyze and assess before you make your decision. So a player to get in the Hall of Fame is measured by these following things: the player's record, their ability, their integrity, their sportsmanship, their character, and their contributions to the game. Now, I have one issue with that, and it's the character part or the integrity. I mean, what does that have to do with playing the game? You can be a piece of shit human being and be fantastic at baseball. I'm not saying that's
a lot of pieces of shit in the Hall of Fame,
and I'm not saying that that's right. But to say that that's your standard, that's what gives the writers a cop-out to not vote for somebody who's the all-time home run leader. Like, he didn't have good sportsmanship. His character was suspect and his integrity was shot because he was using steroids. Well, get the fuck over yourself. Quit trying to be more important than you are. The way the baseball writers are holding some of these guys out is the same way an official tries to assert himself into a game in a sporting event. When you say don't let the refs decide the game, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, that's all this is a big dick showing from the writers. Like, we have some integrity. We kept him out. A Veterans Committee will let him in. It's okay. Baseball will be cool. But yeah, we're upholding our code of conduct. No, the fuck you're not. No, you're not. It's irrelevant. How good was a baseball player? Tell the history of the baseball. Don't tell the history of human beings. I don't like any of these guys that I'm sitting right here defending. I don't like any of them. but they're all phenomenal baseball players. And people need to know that they play baseball. Nobody's bitching that Babe Ruth was smoking and drinking and eating hot dogs and hitting home runs.
Right.
Nobody's complaining about that.
Most of those guys were on drugs too. So
yeah, I mean, we have amphetamines and greenies, all of that. I want to cover it all as we go through the episode today because that's it. If steroids are the thing that's keeping you out, your Hall of Fame's already tainted on that premise with all the amphetamine. I mean, I don't even know what happened before World War II, but there's actual evidence of cocaine and amphetamines all over baseball after World War II, because that's what the service members were doing. All amphetamines started in not started, but their acceptable use for not performance, but just for stimulation was, I'm pretty sure, the Germans. And I'm probably wrong, but I know that the Germans were doing it with Hitler and all of that. Yeah. They were, and then our boys were doing them, and they brought them back from the war.
The French Green Berets.
And I will tell you this for 100% fact, with the utmost certainty, from a guy who played junior college baseball, which isn't that impressive, but it's still a higher level than most people listening have played. I have taken Adderall to play baseball, and it is absolutely the most performance-enhancing anything you could take for the game of baseball. An amphetamine is way more useful than a steroid. A steroid does not make the ball look this fucking big. It does not slow the game down. Like, yeah, Adderall will make your blood pump and get you going and heighten you up. But the first time I took Adderall, I was sitting on a couch in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. We had just gotten off like an 18-hour van ride. It was 11, maybe midnight. We had a game at like 7 in the morning. And instead of going to sleep, a good old college team we were on, we started passing the recreationals around. Here we go. Here, eat this, kid. I'm a freshman, here, have this. All right. Sitting there watching a movie, 45 minutes go by. And I mean, I'm pumped. I'm fucking jacked up, ready to go. It's my second real college baseball tournament. We played in Ohio the week or two before. We get out there. I take this Adderall. I don't even know what it is. Whatever. I don't feel any different. But literally like this. I sat there, looked around and go, does anybody else want to take ground balls right now? The following day, we played 3 games. And I'm pretty sure I hit 4 home runs. I think I only made 1 out the entire day. And it was a fly ball to the warning track. And that was it. And then after we got back, I slept for like 14 hours straight until they drugged me to the van and was like, hey, we got to play more baseball. And then I played like shit the next day. Absolutely like shit.
I needed another Adderall.
I needed more drugs. That's what I needed. But
I bet that you're, man, I hate to say it, but I'll bet that you're probably at 25% of Major League Baseball is probably prescribed Adderall.
I don't know. I have no idea.
A big claim, but I'll bet it's that high. It's that high.
I would assume it's off limits. The NFL can't have it. The Seahawks got in trouble for that shit a while ago because there's no.
You can be prescribed in Major League Baseball.
That's insane. That's the biggest performance enhancer there is.
I don't know if they've changed it recently.
Yeah, you need to look that up because I would argue to the death. I would rather have Adderall than steroids. But I've never taken steroids, so I really can't say that. But a muscle, the only thing steroids would do to help you would be to help you with your day-to-day soreness. I would think that would be a bigger benefit than actually becoming stronger. Because small guys like D. Gordon and Starling Marte have failed for steroids. And they weren't taking steroids to get jacked. Those guys aren't home run hitters. So they were taking them for other benefits. Whether they want to admit to it or not. Even Robinson Cano. He was the modern day Iron Man until he went and shit the bed and broke our heart. So it's tough, but I would want to bet.
Okay. We're going to have to dig for this, but this is from 2014, okay?
Oh, yeah.
2014, Roughly 9.9% of 40-man rosters league-wide, 119 players presented baseball with notes from their doctor that they required such medication.
It says they have to get an exemption. This is from 2019. I found a newer article. In 2019, it was at the lowest level since they started issuing exemptions in 2008. There was 91 therapeutic use exemptions for it should say ADHD. Who fucking wrote this? The USA Today wrote this article. Didn't even write it right.
Probably an AP article, and they just fucking copy and pasted that shit.
In the year ending with the 2019 World Series, that was down from the previous lows of 101 and then 107, 103 and 17. So there's only 91. That's still 3 full teams. 3 full teams worth of players.
It's only 91 guys that actually did the paperwork. The rest of them were like, fuck that, dude.
If I get caught, I get caught.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I don't. It's crazy, dude. But hey, you know, that down the line, are people going to be like, hey, you know, all these guys are on Adderall? I don't think so. And you're going to have, like, you wonder who it is, right? Given those players, how many of those guys are top 10? You know,
just by hearing that, I assume it's got to be the best players in ever.
No
shit. If you're an average player, like if you're hitting 220 on Adderall, just fucking quit baseball. Quit. I'm sorry, quit. You suck. That shit is legitimately performance enhancing. I don't care if you have a legitimate medical need for it or not. That just means you're not a good enough ball player without it. Like. I don't know how else to put it.
And that thing is, you know, when you're talking about the steroid era, those guys were okay. If people were doing steroids, those guys were the best at it. Okay, they were the best. It doesn't matter. You know, everybody else had the opportunity to do steroids. Obviously, we know of people that were doing steroids that didn't make it, that weren't good.
Right.
You know, so like. Just like who you talked about in the last episode, if they want to know the name, they can go look at it. But he was part of the Mitchell investigation, obviously. He admitted to getting the steroids and that. And he was a below average baseball player in the major leagues. So, like, you know, he was never somebody that was going to be this huge superstar. So the idea that, you know, Barry Bonds, you can look at his career, videos, pictures, all that, and you can see when the change happened, right? And he was top 5 baseball players in the game before, you know. So I mean, he would have made the Hall of Fame anyway. So
I wonder how fast his hat size changed. Like one day he just went up to the clubhouse guy and was like, "Hey, I need an 8-inch hat now."
Do you think he regrets being such an arrogant fucking asshole?
No, because I bet nobody bothers him. You know what I mean? He's probably filthy rich and he can do whatever he wants, and he has like nobody's bothering him. Nobody's wanting to get a story from him because he's not a people person. So, and I don't know.
That was his excuse for when they talked to him about the whole steroid thing. Is like he's like, well, obviously McGwire and Sosa were doing steroids, and they were even though Barry Bonds was still great. Nobody talked about Barry Bonds at that time, right? Because you talked about Ken Griffey Jr., Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa. Those were the 3 names that everybody talked about. So, like, you know, Barry Bonds being the guy he is like, hey, those guys got an unfair advantage in the public eye, so I gotta get some of this too. I just, oh man,
I don't know, man. It's just absurd. We're just gonna ramble for however long this takes, friends. So listening at home, I think we make tons of points, but I feel like we're making all the same points you guys are all making too. Even Stephen A. Smith. I can't stand that guy either.
I can't stand him.
He's the absolute king of the worst takes. He has the worst takes ever. Even he was on that ass over this.
What I don't like about Stephen A. is he says a bunch of gibberish to try and like tries to put big words together to sound smart and like aid his opinion, and it's like, dude, it just makes you sound like a dumbass. But whatever.
He's paid very well to sound like a dumbass, though.
yeah. I'll go up there and say indubitably.
I don't know how much of that is really him, though. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if he's a different. Yeah, right. That's what I don't like about mainstream media, though. Is I don't find a lot of those people believable. Even if I agree or disagree with what they're saying, I'm like, I just feel like they have to do this because that's how their producers say they have to operate. Just say what you want.
Everybody's driven by the dollar, right?
Yeah,
so I
don't care.
Like on both sides, you have the extremes of the TV news personalities. It's pretty wild that's where it's gone. It's like went away from who is like a good journalist and actually goes out there and covers stuff and gets, newsworthy stories that you wouldn't have heard otherwise. Now that's just regurgitating bullet points.
Yeah, who can find the most inflammatory shit to say to get attention?
Terrible.
To get attention, whatever. That's why we're here. Listen to us. We might be wrong, but we're not gonna. Nobody's telling us what to say. That's the problem.
Right.
That's why we're gonna be wrong.
All right. So, you got Barry Bonds in. You got Roger Clemens in.
Yes.
You got Sammy Sosa in.
100%.
Do you have A-Rod in?
Yeah, you have to. I hate the guy. He's a Hall of Famer. He's like fourth without looking. I think he's fourth all time in RBIs. All time.
Do you have David Ortiz in?
Yeah. I mean, he's the greatest DH ever.
So,
if Harold Baines is in, you know what I mean?
Rafael Palmeiro would be pissed. No, so, like, how many of those guys do you think the Veterans Committee puts in?
I think the Veterans Committee has put them all in. I didn't dig into how the Veterans Committee operates.
Okay, so who else from the list this year do you think should have got it?
Kurt Schilling. Can I say that without people trying to bomb my house? Again, think what you want about. I think I've made this perfectly clear throughout the entire beginning of this. I don't like most of these players as humans. They're fantastic players. Absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, definitely Kurt Schilling. So, David Ortiz, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Kurt Schilling. There's a really great argument to make for Scott Rowland. I don't know. I'm indifferent. If you vote him in, I'm good with it. If you don't,
did you look at the list?
What list?
Todd Helton.
Yeah, he's on there. Andrew Jones.
Should he get in? Todd Helton.
Coors Field. What does Coors Field play into a career? You know,
lot. It's a lot.
So it
really does. I mean, just looking at guys that leave there, it plays a lot.
I don't know. I don't have all their statistics in front of me to crunch numbers. I was just more focused on how fucked this entire situation is. These writers, should every one of them that didn't vote for these people for whatever moral fake bullshit reason they have, they need to just resign. They need to give up their ability to vote. Let the players vote. Why does the writer get to vote? Why? Because they cover a team or they cover the sport? What does that give them? I need any writer, if any writer listens to this, whether you voted for him or not. Tell me why you think you're important. Why you're any more important than me or any other casual observer. I mean, I watch.
That'd be an interesting conversation to have.
Come on, bring your words and your fucking degree and bring it on, and I promise you I won't be mean to you. But you're going to have to say something that makes sense, because otherwise I think you guys are just sitting up there high and mighty like assholes playing God, and you might not know the first fucking thing about baseball. How much baseball did you play, you know? Like if you haven't even played the game, period, like if you only played Little League, you don't get a say.
Like who the hell voted for AJ Przinsky? Like two people voted for him. I don't know. That's just like asinine to me.
Yeah. Like Tim Lincecum won 2 Cy Youngs, right? 2 or 3. I think he won 2 Cy Young awards. Yeah. He only got 9 votes because he was only good for a few years. He was only elite dominating for a few years. And he won't be on the ballot next year either.
You know, it's that's one of those things.
Also, for Sosa people, we know he used a cork bat. Is it cheating? Yes. Does it help? No. Chalk it up to him being a dumbass. That's it. The steroid test he failed, like we covered earlier, is the exact same test Ortiz failed that Manfred said. So I want to read this anyway. So let's start this at the top. On July 30th, 2009, the New York Times, citing anonymous sources, reported that Ortiz was among a group of over 100 Major League players on a list compiled by a federal investigation. That was the Mitchell report, I believe. That allegedly tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs during the Major League Baseball survey testing conducted in the spring training of 2003. This is the same test that Sosa failed for, the only one that they say he failed for. The survey testing was agreed to by Major League Baseball and the MLBPA to determine the extent of performance-enhancing drug use among players before permanent testing was officially implemented in 2004. As part of the agreement, the results of the survey testing were supposed to remain confidential, and no suspensions or penalties would be issued to any players testing positive. So, he fails. Sosa fails. I don't know who else failed that only failed that test. But on October 2nd, 2016, at a press conference at Fenway Park, MLB Commissioner Rob Dumbfuck said it was entirely possible Ortiz did not test positive during the MLB survey drug testing in 2003. The commissioner stated that the alleged failed test should not harm Ortiz's legacy and that there were legitimate scientific questions about whether or not those were truly positives. Manfred added those particular tests were inconclusive because it's hard to distinguish between certain substances that were legal, available over the counter, and not banned under our program. He also said Ortiz has never been positive at any point under our program since they began testing in 2004, and that it is unfair for voters to consider leaks, rumors, innuendo, and non-confirmed positive test results when assessing a player. So if that's why you're holding Sammy Sosa out for the same thing, the same exact test, on June 16, 2009, the New York Times reported that Sosa was on a list of players who tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs in 2003 in the baseball steroid scandal. The paper stated this information had been obtained from unnamed attorneys with knowledge of Major League Baseball test results. That's the only thing. And Sosa went to court went to the hearing before Congress in 2005. His attorney testified on his behalf. To be clear, I've never taken illegal performance-enhancing drugs. I've never injected myself or had anyone inject me with anything. I've not broken the laws of the United States or the laws of the Dominican Republic. I've been tested as recently as 2004, and I am clean. So, what are we doing? What if Ortiz gets in and he's failed to... What are we doing? You can't even make a coherent sentence to defend that. Because if that's the reason you let Ortiz in, because Manfred said that shouldn't be held against him because we don't really know how we're testing yet. We don't know what acceptable levels are. Ortiz's excuse when he asked about this, and it's a very plausible excuse. A lot of MMA fighters use this excuse, and you'll understand anything if you know about MMA. He said he denied ever buying or using steroids, but suggested that the positive test might have been due to his supplements and vitamins at the time. Very legitimate excuse, as we found out throughout the doping testing with MMA when they started actually getting serious about their drug testing. The companies that make supplements, they all, just like baseball cards, so baseball card people will relate to this. The manufacturers all use the same printers to make the cards. Supplement companies all use the same manufacturers to make their supplements. So if they didn't clean out their fucking container that they mix everything together in, it's very possible that you get tainted supplements. They've proven it to be a legitimate excuse. The problem I have with Ortiz's explanation, and again, I like this guy. I like him. He's very likable, clutch as hell, fantastic baseball player. I believe he should be in the Hall of Fame. But here's my issue with what he says. He says when asked which supplements he had been taking, Ortiz said he did not know. I'm sorry. How do you not know what you're putting into your body? I know every single fucking supplement I'm taking right now. I can tell you. I wake up, first thing I do, 8 ounces of water, greens powder, creatine, and some fucking shit for my blood. It's not a medication, but it helps my blood flow. But the only reason I don't know the name is because it's hard to pronounce, and I don't want to sound like an idiot, more so than I already do. And then I take some vitamins, you know what I mean? I know what I'm putting into my body. You can't tell me you did not. That's the worst thing. Just say any supplement. You could have I got a bad fucking jar of protein powder. You never know. It could happen. It's unlikely, but it could happen. Don't say I don't know. To say I don't know, what do you mean you don't know what you're putting in your body? What? That doesn't even make sense. What'd you eat for dinner, stupid? I don't know. What?
Yeah.
It's bad. It's a bad look. So if you let them off the hook because they said that's not a legit test, then that's just me making a Sosa argument, because Sosa and him have very similar careers. Line for line. Biggest kicker is Sami played defense. Sami played defense. Ortiz hit way more doubles than Sosa. Sosa scored more runs. They're very close in at-bats, plate appearances. Ortiz better on-base percentage. Sami played defense, higher WAR. There's 7-time All-Star. Sosa was an MVP. David Ortiz was never an MVP, but he was a 10-time All-Star. 7-time Silver Slugger. Sosa was a 6-time Silver Slugger. I don't get it. I don't get it. Those two are just the closest two. And since Ortiz got in on the first ballot, no less, I don't think Ortiz was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Not with how some of these other guys have not gotten in on the first ballot. So I don't know how you let him in and not everybody else. That's the question that nobody has an answer to, because these guys don't have to make their ballots public. So I went back and looked, and for 2021 voting, it's very hard to break down without having a ton of time to do so. But out of the 401 voters in 2021, 311 of them did make their ballot public. And I believe there was even one person on there that I saw in a brief glance that didn't vote for anybody. If you're not going to vote for anybody, oh, you're cool. Fucking idiot. I don't even remember his name. I'd shout him out if I knew, because that's dumber than fuck too. If you don't want to vote for anybody, what are you going to do? Get 401 people to think like you and cover baseball for 10 years so you guys can just vote for nobody? Nobody. Nobody was good enough.
Mariano Rivera got unanimous, because there usually always is someone that doesn't vote for anybody.
Right.
I mean, it was kind of surprising that Rivera was the first guy that was unanimous. But
Jeter wasn't even unanimous, right?
No.
Yeah, right. No. That's crazy. I'm sorry. I'm not even a big Jeter guy. Not a Yankee fan. But Jeter's more unanimous than Rivera to me. Griffey wasn't unanimous.
No. Greg Max wasn't unanimous.
Are you fucking kidding me? And the Sandman's the guy you're going to unanimously vote in?
Yeah.
How many fucking New York writers are on that fucking list?
Probably a lot. And that's I think there's obviously an East Coast bias for anything that has to do with the Baseball Writers Association. Huge East Coast bias. Huge.
I don't understand. I don't know enough about it, so I'm just gonna bitch about it, and then I'm gonna hope that one of them catches me outside, and we could talk about it. You know, so I'd love to get a baseball writer on here. Anybody, even somebody who voted for Bonds, just so maybe he could talk shit about his peers, or just explain to us who his peers are. Like old Timmy ain't never even played t-ball, but here he is writing about the Mets. Come on. Oh, and now you did it for 10 years, so you get the vote on the Hall of Fame? Come on. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. There's no qualifications required. There's no test. There's no fucking math test. There's no common sense. There should be some sort of common sense and neurological evaluation where we know that you're competent to hold a logical thought in your head. Like, people probably really hate me sometimes because of the way I deliver my messages, but I feel like they're always very sound. Like, you can argue against me all you want, but I feel like there's always logic in my argument. I'm not the most presentable person. So these guys, man, just like quit trying to make it sound good. I don't care how it sounds. I just want to get my point across. I feel like these people just want it to sound good. Like, because his character was in question and his integrity was a bit sacrificial after the 2003 results prior to spring training. Like, what? No, they said throw him out. No, we threw him out for Ortiz, and that's why he's in on the first ballot. He didn't even play defense. I mean, maybe he played some defense with the Twins coming up.
Little first base.
Yeah, but I mean, what are we doing?
Nothing of any importance. I don't think he was very good at all in the field. So they ended that real quick.
Yeah, he played 586 innings in 1998 at first base. Yeah. 68 games. Only 68 games. He didn't even finish them all. He only finished 58 of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, just not very good. Not very good at all. So, yeah, I mean, it's just offensive. So, when you look at his WAR, like, to rack up a 55.3 WAR not playing the field is obviously very good. If you had I don't know if there's anybody that offensively prolific that has like a negative defensive WAR to lower down the offense. You know what I mean? He didn't do anything to hurt him. He was never in a position to hurt himself, really. So if he would have been in the National League and been a shit first baseman for 5 or 10 years, do you think that keeps him out? Like, it's like obviously the DH was his position and it helped him and it got him in. He's a clutch. I mean, the dude is ridiculously clutch. I absolutely hated DHing. I hated it. There's no rhythm. There's no flow. You're not moving around. At least in the lower levels that I played in, where you didn't have a batting cage to go back and swing on. You know what I mean? You had to sit in the dugout, and most of the time in the Midwest, it's freezing cold outside until you got past your like actual seasons, until you got into the summer. Like, you play all your meaningful recruiting, professional, collegiate baseball games in the spring when it's freezing cold, and then all your improvement development baseball gets played in the summer when everything feels good. But the DH in the cold and the fucking snowstorm, come on, go taking a bat, you got to sit down. So the fact that he could go 4 for 4 on a given day, not doing a whole lot, is really impressive. I think that's more impressive than playing the field. I think that's the one thing about being a DH that everyone overlooks. Like, it's so much harder to stay in the game DHing.
Yeah. I wonder, like, how, I'd have to look sometime, but with the introduction of like the indoor batting cages underneath the dugouts or behind the dugouts and stuff like that now, I mean, it's got to be pretty nice being able to go into the cage in the middle of a game and take some hacks and just get a feel for things right before you go back. I'd say it's less of a challenge now than it was before. Like, staying warm and stuff. I think staying warm is a lot easier now, especially like even at Wrigley, which we know terrible facilities, and like that. Just now they've been adding those batting cages and stuff. So I mean, I don't. It's tough. It's tough because I think that with Ortiz, I think he just got so much love from the journalists, the writers, and in comparison to some of the guys that were on the ballot that even aren't like part of the steroid thing,
Absolutely.
It's really hard to believe that he went first ballot, and some of those guys that have been on the ballot already didn't get a real shot at it this year.
That's why I feel like the writers have something to answer for, because it's not the hall of popularity. It's not. It's not the hall of likability. It's not the hall of good human beings. It's not the hall of any. It's the hall of fame. That's it. It's the hall of fame. Who's the best? That's it. Hall of Fame. I don't want to hear nothing else. Fuck media and all that. Don't suck the media's dick just so you can get in. No. Be whoever you are. And if that's really who you are, that's fantastic. I love to hear it. But don't play this other game because you had to, these other people, like you said, there's other people. Why are they not in? Why is this the way things are? It's obviously flawed beyond repair. Blow it up and start over. Or otherwise, 10 years after we start this podcast, Pav, we're going to be able to register and sign this code of conduct and vote on the Hall of Fame too. You and me. We'll each get a vote.
Let's do it. I'll make my ballot public.
That's all it takes. Mine'll be public too.
And people can argue with me. That's part of being a journalist. I mean, being able to back up your who you're voting for, being able to back that up with some statistics or anything.
Reason.
Why do you have that opinion, right? So
everyone's entitled to their opinion. We know this.
I wish they made all the ballots public. I think they should be. I think
they should be because there's obvious. There's just obvious omissions that when you make your ballot public, you could literally say, "Well, listen, you're clearly not competent enough covering baseball to have this vote. You're no longer welcome to vote." It's that simple,
right?
Because your personal bias doesn't come into play. If you want to say, "Hey, they have questionable integrity or character," or whatever, no. Some of these guys like A-Rod and Bonds, their statistics are so far above and beyond other human beings. It doesn't matter who they are. And not to mention that, if their integrity or character was that bad, why would ESPN hire A-Rod? He's the most prolific steroid user next to Barry Bonds. And he's the guy that sits down with you every Sunday night and talks baseball with you on national TV, impressioning little kids and everything. You know what I mean? Like, it's if they're not holding him off of TV where he's talking to millions of people every week, why are we keeping him out of the Hall of Fame? What, I don't understand. Your integrity and character argument goes out the window when ESPN hired that guy. Like, sorry, you're letting a guy was he the most penalized? Because he had to have been, right? He missed a whole year with the Yankees. He got suspended for an entire season when A-Rod got popped. And he's probably the biggest name to get suspended an entire season because there's been other players that have lost that time. But for a guy to get suspended for a whole season and then a network just hire him like, "Hey, you're so good at hitting baseball. You've done all these amazing things in the game of baseball. Come talk to us. Come broadcast. Come be an analyst. Come hang out with us." But no, you're not good enough to go to the Hall of Fame. What? What? But you could talk to us about baseball? Why don't you talk to us about steroids? Oh, we don't want you to do that. Okay, well, let them in the Hall of Fame. Just let them in. That's the only argument I want to make tonight. Let them in. Let them all in. You don't have to like them. I don't like them. I don't. Can't stand them. I think he's terrible at his job too. By the way, ESPN, what's up? Let me talk baseball. It's 2-1. I bet he's gonna throw him a fastball. Oh, it's he's ahead in the count. Look for that low curveball down and out of the zone. Whatever, dude. Whatever. I think you're terrible, but you deserve to be in the Hall of Fame there, Mr. A-Rod. And the worst part is I loved A-Rod as a kid. Loved him. How do you not like him? The Mariners, and then gets a gigantic contracts and playing shortstop at third base and just an absolute stud and gigantic cheater. Whatever, I'm over it now. At least he didn't Hulk Hogan me. Tell me to say my prayers and eat my vegetables and shit. And the whole time he was fucking having bologna sandwiches. Getting jacked. I'm eating my vegetables, Mom. How come I'm not getting any bigger?
But yeah, A-Rod was the longest suspension for a player. Other than there's been other players that got the full season suspension. But there's never been anything longer that I see other than the Black Sox.
But even at that, he got 34.3% of the vote. First year on the ballot, right, for A-Rod?
Was this his first one?
I think so. I could be wrong.
Dude, maybe he'll be the first steroid to use that. Well, I guess if David Ortiz is a steroid user, then he
already is. I'm sorry. There's no. Once you said you didn't know what you're putting into your body, you lost me. What do you mean you don't know what you're putting in? You're a professional athlete. You know what you're putting in your body. It's just the easiest way to deny responsibility or accountability for your actions. That's all it is. And I'm fine with it because everybody else is doing it too. If they all want to jump off a bridge, fuck it. Jump. Just keep playing baseball. That's all. You know what I mean? I just want to watch baseball. It's not like combat sports. I don't think you should have steroids in combat sports. You're literally trying to kill each other. So that's the only sport where I'm anti-steroids. If football, sure. Put a bigger pad on them if you're that worried. You know what I mean? I don't like the way football's going anyway. It's so anti-defense in the name of safety, which I can respect, but at some point you got to draw a line and just let them play football. That's what they signed up to do. Very few people are stopping playing football. There's Andrew Luck might be the highest profile guy, but he was just getting injuries. We don't know if it was just, he didn't want to continue to get his head beat around, but there's not enough people that have quit playing football to where you have to say oh, we need to be safer. No, these dudes all know what they're playing. They all know the stakes. They all know how wild it's going to get. And they probably all live for that shit. You know what I mean? I know what it's like to get a little zoomed in mentally. Hey, we have an objective. The objective is to win. There's nothing wrong with going to a primal type place while you're in that competition, as long as you can keep it within the rules and the regulations of that sport. You want to win at all costs. I mean, that's a thing. Since the beginning of human time, people will do whatever it takes to get an advantage, to win, to not fail. Nobody wants to be a failure, especially when you're competing at the highest level. And I feel like not enough people understand what it's like to compete in general. I wonder what the percentage of humans who have just played a sport. It doesn't have to even be in at the high school level, just to compete at anything. I don't it's so hard to explain that to people if they've never done it. I'm sorry, but losing is the worst thing ever. I don't like losing anything. My 5-year-old beat me in a game of tic-tac-toe, and I almost fucking stormed out of Applebee's. You know what I mean? I was explaining to her how not to lose, because we play, and I beat her in 3 things every time. Baby girl, please look here, look here, look here. I'd get to where I could win on the next move. I'm like, Riley, please, look at where you're going to put that X. Now, can Daddy put a circle anywhere else, And I told her too much, and she beat me fair and square, and I was pissed. Absolutely mad. And that's my own kid. I don't like to lose. World-class athletes do not like to lose. Nobody wants to lose. So you're always going to be pushing for an advantage, whether it's cheating or whatever. But to get mean and nasty, man. Like football and combat sports and whatever your goal at basketball, it doesn't matter. Track, anything. You got to get into your zone to compete. Competitors go to a different place mentally when you're competing. It's just that simple. You go somewhere else because if you're that good at competing, I think my favorite thing about it, and I think that's why I like going to the gym so much now, is I don't really think about shit other than what I'm actually doing. When you're not competing, you have so many distractions, especially with these phones and everything we have nowadays and all these apps and TikTok and all this bullshit. It's so easy to get distracted. When you're doing something where you can disconnect, like the only thing that like, yeah, sure, you might be playing in front of 100,000 people, but I'm sure to be on the field, actually a part of the game, like you're not even worried about them people. Oh, you're focused on the mission. Baseball, same thing. There's 60,000 people watching you in the stands, but if you're in the batter's box, all you're doing is looking at the pitcher. It's just a different thing, and I don't think enough people understand that. Competitors compete, and they compete to win. Nobody's playing to lose, and everybody's going to try and find a way to cheat. The only reason they cheated is because they got caught. So outside of that, how many people are in the Hall of Fame that cheated and never got caught?
How many are okay? So how many are in the Hall of Fame that cheated, and we know they cheated, and they're still there? So that's the thing is like, the pressure really needs to be put on because obviously, the in the court of public opinion, the players that were part of the steroid era, they've already been through that. They've been questioned. They've been pushed, prodded, all that good stuff. Now, the Baseball Writers Association, they really need to be put in their place, and, they should be coming out with some sort of standard that this is the level of cheating that we're okay with. So at least these guys know how much they can cheat. If you're a player and like, hey, you know what? Using some pine tar on the baseball as a pitcher, that's okay, But hey, doing a little steroids in the off season, no, not okay. So I mean, the level of cheating, we need to have some sort of guidelines, right, for baseball. That okay, this is the amount of acceptable cheating for you to be considered for the Hall of Fame. So it's just like with David Ortiz. Well, you can use steroids as long as you don't have a conclusive positive test. So if you could find some steroids that you could do and, your results come out inconclusive, then, hey, we're all for that. We need clarification. I think that's the big thing for everybody is everybody wants clarification. How much cheating is okay? That's what we want to know. The Baseball Writers Association has to address that.
Sure, because you can't take anybody out after they get in, right? Once they're in, they're in. You can't take them out.
Oh, man. What a mess.
It's an absolute mess, and it's their own doing because they're hypocritical in who they're letting in and who they're keeping out. It's a popularity contest. It's obviously a popularity contest, especially at this point where we're at now.
I wonder how many they really need to let us know who all the voters are, because like how many of these guys don't even give a crap about baseball anymore? How many don't even watch a game anymore? How many of them are so old that they don't even know what's going on in the world anymore? But they've had this vote card sent to them every year. And they just fill out. They might not even know the names. Hey, I like this name. It sounds cool, and send it in. I think it's important that we have a better idea of who is picking the Hall of Famers.
I think it should be 100% public. Agreed. But I don't even think writers should get to vote. It should be players.
I think you like. The idea of integrity and character, so they don't have to go by that. The Baseball Writers Association doesn't have to be held under the same the same standards.
All I found is they sign a code of conduct, but I don't know what the code of conduct is.
It's obviously jackassery. I mean, you look at the results. Who are these guys? That are voting for the. When you look at some of these votes, it's it'll give you a headache. Like I said before, who the hell voted for AJ Przinsky? Whoever those two guys that voted for AJ Przinsky, they shouldn't be allowed to vote anymore. I mean, people need to be held accountable for this stuff.
Absolutely. I agree, because it's not a popularity contest. So whoever voted for AJ Przinsky obviously likes AJ Przinsky, and that's okay. I don't like him. People do, especially Chicago people. They love him.
Right.
Love the guy.
Right.
But none of that matters when you're discussing the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall
was he one of the greatest ever? No, not even close.
No. Right.
It's crazy.
It's just absurd, dude. It's absolutely absurd. I found the Constitution for the Baseball Writers of America, but I don't see anything where it says anything about their code of conduct. It just has their duties like any other thing with officials and things like that. Meetings, judicial, board of directors, disciplinary action. It doesn't make any sense.
Is Gary Sheffield a Hall of Famer?
I don't know. I really don't know. Is Gary Sheffield a Hall of Famer, Pav?
500 home runs, 253 stolen bases.
I would say yeah. I don't see why you wouldn't be. 500 home runs, man. How many total is there with 500 home runs? Hang on, I'll look right now.
He won a batting title. That's one of those guys. And that's something we'll never know.
You only have 28 players with 500 or more home runs. That alone gets you in. I'm sorry. There's only 28 people in the history of this sport, which has spanned over 120, 150. I don't even know when baseball started, but I want to say at least 150 years. You've only had 28 people.
I think
28 people.
So
yeah, it's in the 1870s, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you only have 28 humans that have ever hit 500 home runs.
1,200 guys on the 40-man rosters, right? So you got 30 teams, 40-man roster. So active rosters, 750 a year.
Yeah.
So it's pretty crazy. But again, this is one of those things that's like
but here we are with Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez. Pujols will get in, but he's not in yet. You have Sami. You have 3 of the top 10 all-time home run guys not in the Hall of Fame over bullshit. I'm sorry, they're top 10 all-time in the entirety of the sport. 3 of the top 10 players of all time are not enshrined where they should be. 30% of the top 10, not even where they belong. They don't get their plaque. Come on. They don't have to be a good human being to get their plaque. They just have to be in the top 10 of all humans in the last 150 years to get it. And some douchebag with a pen and a paper says, no, not voting for him. Come on. It's just ridiculous. My brain can't make words when it gets that upsetting to me. It doesn't make any sense, and no one's being held accountable.
Oh man, I'm gonna get hot take beat up for this, but it's okay. So like the thing with steroids too is like, so you're taking these guys from what 2000 to 2010 6. Did you say that's like
something like that? Yeah.
Okay. So like the tough thing for me, okay, is like more than likely, and people can beat me up for this forever, but more than likely, Ken Griffey Jr. was on steroids. I mean, you look at, you look at his growth in that time period, and I mean, you can take these guys and put them side by side, and it's one of those things that from the early 90s, you know who Ken Caminiti is. He won MVP in 96, right? Yeah, 96 won an MVP. He was a steroid user back in the day, and like that wasn't a talked about thing at the time. And it wasn't until it got so obvious that everybody started pushing, like, okay, and again, like, who decided that, okay, this is the time to attack these guys? But I mean, it was pretty obvious for a few years before they started to push for some kind of involvement. And then, why the hell does the government have to get involved? Why do they care what's going on in Major League Baseball?
I think because steroids are federally illegal. I think that's the only reason, and they have to.
They are, but again, not all of them are. And like at the time, HGH wasn't. It wasn't federally illegal. I can remember, and like this is one of the things me and my brother talk about a lot, is there was late night infomercials selling HGH back in the day.
I could have gotten HGH in college if I could have afforded it, and there's no college testing that would have ever showed me failing for it.
Right.
At that time. This was 12, 13 years ago.
I can remember these late night infomercials, and it was like, really, those infomercials were geared towards older people, and it was being used as a method to decrease the wrinkles in your face. Get this HGH and rub it on your face and get those muscles to start growing and tighten up.
That was just the Barry Bonds fire sale. That's all that was.
Yeah, but it was before all. I mean, it's really funny that, like, it's been rampant for a long time. To think that, like, there's not guys out there that are actively getting away with, some sort of substance that's making their game better.
Oh, absolutely.
It's naive.
The MMA world is huge for that because there's a lot of people that so the way fighters get tested, they can show up wherever you're at. You have to tell them your location. If you leave town, you have to tell them, and they'll show up at your hotel room at 4 a.m. and say, "Hey, let's go." And there's people that get away around it. And to my understanding, they're allowed to no-show for 2 tests, and then the third time is like an automatic failure. So they can no-show twice. But I've heard a lot about microdosing in certain like artificial steroids that are designed to like block androgen receptors and all sorts of shit. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. For anybody listening, I just know stuff from what I've read. So they're like I said, from the beginning of time, humans are trying to find an advantage. So all that they're doing now is trying to find ways to cheat the system and get around the testing that is implemented now. And if there's things called like a biological passport, it's like it's your blood level that's specific to you for all your different levels. And if they don't have that for you, then you can elevate your levels to like a tolerable level, but you're still taking something to get there. If you're naturally below, so you can cheat. And then along with the federal stuff, Now you're saying folks were getting their shit. Have you seen that Screwball documentary with A-Rod and all that shit that was going on down in Florida? Like the doctor that was prescribing him shit had a bullshit license and all sorts of stuff to do what he was doing. So that's a wild deal too. And that's what ended up getting him caught up in all of that. Was the guy he was going to get his stuff wasn't even a legitimate doctor. He was just a guy with a certificate that he got somewhere else. He had a real doctor with I think the doctor might have been using his dad or someone who was a legitimate real doctor to prescribe the shit, but the guy himself that was doing it was not a legitimate doctor. I only watched it one time, but I just laughed when he said that. I'm like, wait, they still don't even get the shit the right way, because they try to keep it all anonymous and do it with cash, and they were trying to, not get caught, and they still got caught because some dude kept a notebook. All because some guy kept some notebooks and the wrong guy got the notebook. Like, come on. Just screwing yourself.
Yeah, people are they do dumb things across all, whether in the criminal world or the legal world.
Because they want to win. They want to win. They want to be the best. I understand why people cheat. Morally, it's wrong. Of course. Absolutely. It's wrong. But the whole argument is you have people in that are cheaters. So if you let one cheater in, you have to let every cheater in. I almost have zero tolerance for an acceptable level. No, you let cheaters in. There's cheaters in. They all get to go in now. Cheating does not harm you from getting in the Hall of Fame now. If you get caught, you will be penalized games while you're playing. But if you get through your entire career cheating your ass off, and you don't get caught and you don't get suspended, hey, good for you. I mean, you were just the best cheater. Cheaters aren't, like, when people get caught, how often are people actually sorry that they did something? No, they're sorry they got caught.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever sorry they did it, because how often do people just turn themselves in or like have a change of heart? Very infrequently. Like they do something bad and they're like, I did this. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. Nobody does that. You gotta get caught.
No one showed up to that meeting with Congress and said, "Yeah, I took steroids. That was me."
Yeah, no AAA dude showed up to get some airtime. No, none of that happened.
No, it's just a bummer because I think really the Hall of Fame should just be a measure of these guys against other players in their era. And I mean, from that era, the majority, if it's as high as people say it was, the steroid use, those guys were the best. So I mean, the question of, should they be in the Hall of Fame? Yeah, they should be in the Hall of Fame. They were the best at that time. So I mean, it's pretty silly to block these guys out. I don't know how the Veterans Committee will feel about it. But again, who knows what any of those guys were taking when they were playing.
Right.
And are they, if those guys roll on amphetamines when they were playing, are they going to look at it differently and be like, hey, I took some shit and I'm here? Obviously they're not going to go out on TV and say that.
Right. But I think in order to sleep at night, they're going to have to. I mean, you can't, I don't know. You can't. The amphetamines and greenies from the 40s on. So you're talking about a history of almost 80 years now. That's factually documented. They said that shit was just sitting in the dugouts. Beans, pills, little pills, man. Just go pop a pill. Be good to go. Play all day. play all day at a high level. Go ahead. Here you go. I mean, that helps. I'm telling you what I said at the beginning of the show. I mean, that's the best baseball I ever played in my life. Followed by the worst.
The fact that these guys were able to go out and drink and party after games and then wake up the next day and perform at a high level, I think it's pretty obvious that they were doing those things. I mean, look, I'm not good at baseball when I'm drunk. It's not an advantage. I'm not good at baseball when I'm hungover, But hey, give me a little pick me up, and I'll be able to perform for you. I think for a lot of those guys, that I think it was an everyday thing for them. I don't think it's going to be something that they're going to acknowledge or talk about and say, yeah, that's what was going on. But, when you see the stories of the way these guys lived, I think it's pretty obvious that they had a little help.
Oh, I mean, it's not even, it's just a fact.
Yeah.
It's just absolute facts.
And again, I don't. I think everybody needs to get away from just that talk. I think everybody needs to get away from the talk of, okay, this is cheating or this is cheating, and just remember that this is supposed to be basically a ranking of these guys were the best in Major League Baseball at the time that they played. So I think everybody needs to get away from worrying about, what drugs anybody was on, because across the board, like we said, you're not keeping guys out because they used pine tar when they pitched. So like that whole thing is, what level of cheating is acceptable? Again, if you're going to say, hey, this guy's cheating was worse than this guy's cheating, I think that's where you're getting away from anything that people are going to have a taste for. It gets pretty salty then.
Well, there's this article, and it was published in 2018 by Rachel Sasser. And it says, remember when everyone in the major leagues was using greenies? And it says, some experts, and I don't like this, and anybody listening, just know that I don't like it when it says some experts, because I don't feel like that's, who are these experts? That's what I want to know. Some experts could be anybody. The baseball writers are apparently experts at getting it wrong. So
270 doctors say that Joe Rogan. That poor guy.
So anyway, some experts, that guy's rich. He's gonna be all right. Some experts estimate that around 85% of Major League Baseball players were using greenies. So it says they weren't even banned until 2006, and up until then, they were pretty much the worst kept secret in baseball. For those of you who don't know what amphetamines do to you, shout out to you guys for not tainting your body. Your body should be a temple. You should not do drugs, blah, blah, blah. Vegetables, protein, say your prayers, all that shit. It says they speed up your heart, heighten your senses, alertness, aggression, and reaction time. Reaction time is the biggest key. Steroids don't do a dick for your reaction time, and all hitting is reaction time. Even fielding is reaction time. How quick you can react to the flight path or the ball path when it's on the ground. So they were basically speed. Players refer to taking greenies as beaning up. If you don't take them, you were playing naked. They were supposedly great for your game, fighting hangovers and staying awake, to your point about partying earlier. It says, but it wasn't just the increased alertness. Some guys claim they even helped them see the ball better, which is my experience. The ball was this fucking big, dude, and I stand by that. It was unbelievable. When they say the guy's seeing a beach ball right now or a softball or any, those are true things. Like, it's crazy. There are doping experts that say these stimulants could increase hand-eye coordination as well, which is baseball. With side effects like these, it's a wonder that 100% of players weren't using them. But anyway, moving on, it says, and I have to go find this interview, but Paul LaDuca was a catcher, a big league catcher, says about his days with the Dodgers and MLB teams, he said that most guys today would probably prefer greenies over steroids if given the choice, which is what I said in the very beginning. And that was before we even read this. He said he reminisced on days when one pot of coffee in the clubhouse would be regular coffee and one would be loaded with greenies. All you needed was a single shot of it to be good for the whole day. Said when one of the security guards at Dodger Stadium drank a cup of the wrong stuff, he turned red in the face and had to be taken to the hospital. The security guard grabbed the wrong pot, got fucked up. Said this isn't a rare story, though. Lots of clubhouses tell similar tales of 2 pots of coffee brewing in the clubhouse at all times.
Yeah, that one with the orange ring. That's not decaf, baby.
That's that racing fuel.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
It just says, so some of these guys, however, needed greenies just to take the field, as baseball has one of the toughest schedules in professional sports. Most people, like, this is why I laugh at basketball all the time in their fucking I need to rest shit. You run for 48 minutes. Like, yeah, you're running as hard as you can for 48 minutes, but you're not even playing the full 48 minutes. You're telling me you need a fucking rest when you got 50,000 people? Once, you don't play back-to-backs all the time. And you got 50,000 people that paid money to come see you play, and you're like, oh, I'm resting today. I'm glad the NBA did something about that resting shit, because it was getting ridiculous. If you can't play 82 games, what's 82? It's not even 80 hours a year. It's not even 4 full days of your life in a season. If you can't run for that, I do more cardio than that. Like granted, I'm not that athlete, but to say I'm tired and I need rest, that's ridiculous. Load management, whatever this bullshit is. Now, why did none of these other guys before them need that? Why do they need it now? Professional, and that's always been the knock on baseball. Is it's not physical, it's easy. Like, no, it's a fucking grind, an absolute grind, day in and day out. Whether you feel good, whether you're beat up, banged, bruised, any of that. With the grueling calendar of 162 game season, cross country flights, back-to-back games, night after night, day games after night games, where you're not even, sometimes you don't even get 12 hours in between games. It's really shocking that players popped greenies to fight fatigue, to stay up. To counteract the stimulant effects, players would often use the booze to be able to sleep and get through their flights. But that's another issue. But like even the Red Sox, they had problems with alcohol in their clubhouse. It's a thing.
When's this article from?
It's from 2018.
Yeah, so like you said, with the players, more players saying that they'd rather do the greenies than steroids now, especially with the juiced baseballs we've seen the last few years. I mean, if all of a sudden you can make more solid contact, I would think that greenies would be the choice. And like we said, with that's the thing, is like how we talked about the Ritalin, Adderall, those drugs. You have so many people that are taking them with a doctor's note.
Right.
I don't know. It's got to be still really rampant, I would think.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm absolutely strong enough, and I was in college, absolutely strong enough to hit the ball out of the park. I didn't need steroids to get bigger. They were available to me if I could afford them. But once I had that Adderall, holy shit. Give me all of that. I'll take it all right now. What do I need to tell the doctor? Because this is what I need. That's what makes you perform. Hand-eye coordination. The ball's bigger. You're absolutely focused, zoned in. You can't be distracted if you get locked in on it. If you're locked in the plate, like, who knows if you're even going to pay attention to your third base coach because you're locked in on the pitcher. They're far superior to steroids, but I don't have the steroid experience. I just don't see what steroids would help other than being less sore. That's the only big advantage, is the daily grind. It would probably make the daily grind easier. Your shoulder is probably less sore. Your elbow, if you ever had elbow problems. My shoulder was always my biggest thing. Like, yeah, the running and stuff, your legs wouldn't get sore. You just get dead legs where you're running and, you feel like you're going nowhere. But they're not sore, they're not tired, but they are, but you just don't feel it anymore, So I'm sure the steroids would help for things like that. But the shoulder soreness, I'm sure, I don't see it as how the casual observer and the general public sees it. It's, if you take steroids, you're going to hit home runs. Like, no fucking way. You have to be able to make contact, good contact, with the ball, with your hand-eye coordination and your reaction time and what you're actually doing. It has nothing to do with how many plates you can throw around in the gym. I mean, that's not it. I used to get yelled at by coaches in college for lifting heavy. They didn't even want you to lift heavy. That was our strength and conditioning program was not heavy lifting. There was no heavy lifting. There was compound lifts and like movements that even power lifters and Olympians would do. We would do those types of lifts, but we weren't doing them to see how we could pick up the most weight. We were trying to build up our quick twitching muscles and things like that, so our reaction would be better, so our muscles would fire, our neurological brain. I don't know all the science behind the shit, but you were trying to get faster. You weren't trying to get stronger. You were trying to get your body to process, your body to function quicker. Quicker. Take speed, you'll get quicker. Fuck steroids. Speed's a more performance-enhancing thing. Adderall, greenies, all of that. It's speed. It's amphetamine. It's meth. I've never taken meth in that context of it, but I'm,
Yeah, obviously, we've been around a lot of people. We're at the age where we've known a lot of people, and most people that I talk to compare Adderall to being cocaine that that lasts a lot longer. So I mean, it's pretty interesting that I don't know. It's again, it doesn't make sense. I think it's going to be. I think it's really going to be interesting when the Veterans Committee does put one of these guys in the Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be a big day, and that there's going to be a lot of back and forth between the Baseball Writers Association and the Veterans Committee at that point.
The Veterans Committee just tell them to fuck off.
It's an interesting thing because the reality is that the Hall of Fame is basically ran by the Baseball Writers Association. It's not to be honest, it's less MLB than Baseball Writers Association at this point. So it's kind of a bummer that is what we and I don't know. We've become so politicized in America across all functions of life that it's embarrassing.
It's disgusting.
For stuff like this.
Yeah,
because it's pretty obvious that guys are voting based on their personal politics rather than the reality of who it was the best players.
Absolutely.
So it's tough.
Yeah, and then the rest of this article, dude, it's everything we talked about. It says when the greenies were banned in 2006. It also says Barry Bonds failed an amphetamine test before he failed a steroid test.
Yeah.
So Bonds isn't an idiot. Anybody who thinks you can go Eric Chavez, Oakland A's. He was a real good ball player back in the day. Says anyone who thinks you can go through a season normally and your body can just respond normally after what we go through is unreasonable. I'm not saying taking greenies away isn't a good thing, but guys are definitely going to look for a replacement. And then it says when these substances were outlawed, players started trying to get prescriptions for Adderall and other ADHD meds. They then couple these with locker room pain relievers. Now many are looking to caffeine and energy drinks. King-size cans of Monster, 5-hour energy shots, and tons of Red Bull. Some teams actually provide them to players, some don't, but no MLB team bans players from drinking them. It says according to Major League pitcher Jason Grilli, I believe he pitched for the Pirates, by the way.
Yep.
Says in an interview with USA Today, the reason guys take energy drinks is because there's not anything else legal to take, and let's face it, the competitive edge is why the whole steroid thing got rampant. It's just human nature is what it all boils down to. So who's a baseball writer to sit here and say, I'm better than you? No, you're not. You're not top 10 all time in home runs, dickwad. You're not. So let him in. because there's already cheaters in. It's human history. To say cheating is unacceptable, like, no, it's not acceptable. But when you don't handle it the right way, then you open up the floodgates, and this is where we're at. So, ball's in the veterans' court now. It has to be, because you can't. How does Bonds? I don't know. How does he not get in the Hall of Fame? I mean, Pete Rose too, but that's a whole nother topic. Pete Rose is the ultimate epitome of confidence, betting on himself. Come on, betting on himself. It's silly, but honestly, I understand the reasoning to keep Pete Rose out more than I understand the steroid thing, because gambling can get that integrity thing going on. It's not a competitive edge. So at some point, now Pete Rose, to everyone's knowledge, never bet against himself or his team. But if you look at the Black Sox, there could have come a point in time where somebody put so much money in front of Pete Rose that he couldn't turn it away. I mean, baseball players did not make the type of money they make now back then. That's why Pete Rose still signs every fucking baseball on planet Earth at every single comic convention and card show, because he's got to make a buck. And I'm not knocking Pete Rose for that at all, man. Keep hustling, Charlie. You know what I mean? I fucking love it. But it's a shame that guy still has to do stuff like that. He's the all-time leader in hits. And he's, just forgotten about. I mean, he's never going to be forgotten about, but he's not enshrined as he should be. And I think he should be too, even gambling. But unless something came out and said he gambled against himself. Evander Kane, hockey player, was in the news last year for that. His girlfriend, I believe, right, broke up, and she accused him of betting, like throwing games, basically. And the NHL couldn't find any evidence of it, but she's like, yeah, he bet against the team all the time. Like she went and snitched all over him. That's the hesitation with the whole gambling situation. Not to change any of the subjects at hand, but I can see the side of that more so than I can't see the side of saying he's a cheater, he can't get in, because we've already set the precedent that cheaters are in. And once they're in, you don't take them out. So why not let the greatest in, even if they were the greatest cheaters? Like Aroids might have been the biggest cheater of all time, because he got caught all the way in like 20 after all the scandals and steroids and all of that. After all of those things, he's still doing it, so he didn't give a shit. He was just sorry he got caught. So it doesn't matter, though. It doesn't matter. You already let him in. And here you are letting Ortiz in. And Ortiz failed the test. Whether or not that test is legitimate or not, you have to think that they let him in on the basis of that test isn't legitimate. And then that brings us to the whole Sami Sosa argument. Because if Ortiz is in, why not Sosa? You could say the corked bat, but I'm not buying it. And the fact that Sosa got so few votes, it was like 17% or something like that. I don't have it up, but so far behind Ortiz, there's no fucking logical explanation for that, aside from the fact that the baseball writers are absolutely 100% incompetent, outside of the 17% that voted for Sosa. And I assume they voted for Clemens and Schilling and Bonds and all of that too. And Schilling told the guys to stop voting for him, and he lost votes this year. He lost like 54 votes, I believe, this year over last year, which means the integrity of the writers are fucked too. Because they're letting someone on the outside, even if it's a guy on the ballot, influence their decision. So that's not okay. So where's your fucking code of conduct there, writers? And they're flip-flopping. How are you going to flip-flop? Like, yeah, you're a human. You're allowed to have a different opinion. You're allowed to grow as you get older and become a better person and change your mind on things. All of these things are acceptable. But year over year to lose 54 votes, if you say, I didn't vote for him because the guy told me not to vote for him, then it's not an acceptable reason. He was either good enough or he wasn't. You let him in or you don't. You don't say, I didn't vote for him, or I voted for him yes last year and I voted for him no this year because he told me not to vote for me. Like, no, that's not how it works, dude. That means you're not following your code of conduct. So it's so hypocritical at this point. I don't even know what to make of it, because I could poke a hole in every conceivable argument somebody would have. I feel like there's a hole in it. There's so many holes. It's literally like the Wander Franco Bowman's best rookie debate. There's holes on either side, whether you think that's a rookie card or whether it's not. There's a hole to poke in every argument, and everybody's wrong. That's my opinion, and I think it's correct. So it's just fucking nuts, dude. It's a shame that this is what we have to talk about on the podcast, because we're not going to come to any sort of positive resolution. It's just going to be, everybody's going to be upset. Nobody knows what the standards are. Like you said, I could be okay with them saying, hey, this is an acceptable level of cheating, but I still don't like that. Like, at this point, if you cheated this much, you're good. But if you cheated this much, you're not good. Like, I don't like that, but it's a start, because something's got to change. The way it is now, it's they should not be holding ceremonies for these players, like, while your peers who were better than you are sitting on the sidelines watching you have your ceremony. And that's what sucks for Ortiz. Like, his ceremony is just going to be every post the Major League Baseball made, the Hall of Fame made, on all their social medias, just getting absolutely destroyed.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroyed. It's laughable. They're the laughing stock of their own fucking celebration to enshrine the best players, and they can't even do it right. And now social media is not stupid, and most of them are trolls anyway, but they're right in tearing them up. Like we both said, when Stephen A. Smith is on our side in this one, it's a strange day, because he's a hot take machine. Now you said Griffey was on the sauce. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you say that? Just because after the crackdown he fell apart? Like, do you think that's why his body broke down?
No, I think most guys were then. I think Jeff Bagwell was.
Just a generalized. I see it. I mean, I don't disagree or anything. I just don't want to pretend that that's what happened.
I think that you had, I think you had such a surge across the board at that time that it was pretty obvious that a lot of guys were juicing. And I think especially like to the extent that Griffey played, I think it's hard to believe that he got better at that same time and didn't break down. There's a lot there, but I would contend that the majority of baseball players at the time were using steroids, and I think that probably amongst the best players that percentage was even higher. So I think you can look and see the size difference between a lot of those guys right at that time. It was pretty obvious that the growth that they were seeing. I like the fact that you would see that growth so fast too is pretty telling, because the amount of time it takes to, if you're gaining weight and you want to gain that weight as muscle, you're eating an amazing amount of calories and really doing a lot to try, and if you're trying to do that naturally, it becomes almost impossible to sustain. And then you're playing 162 games of baseball a year. So I think the idea that those guys were hitting the fucking gym in the off season and growing like that, no, you're not doing that in this period of a few months of the off season where you can actually hit the gym and lift weights and spend that time trying to get that kind of growth. It's like the rest of the year you're playing fucking baseball. So I mean, you don't have time to go and do the kind of eating and lifting that you need to do to see that kind of growth, especially the size that these guys are, because they're already big dudes, you know. So I mean, it's pretty telling across the board for most of these guys.
No, I'd agree with you, because especially you're not lifting to get bigger in season. No way. You would absolutely.
Not a
There's
chance.
no way.
You'd fucking hurt yourself.
Well, not only that, you just wouldn't. You're trying to every day. You're trying to recover from the day before, basically. So there's no way.
Right.
There's absolutely no way. Because there's no way you could gain that muscle and recover from the bumps and bruises you're already dealing with. So I'm with you on that. I'm not going to argue that, not one bit. If I've never played a 162 game season, but just play 3 months, play 90 games. Play 90 games and tell me how you feel. It's grueling.
Yeah. That's the thing, is like when you go from Little League, where you're playing 15 games, and then you go to high school and you're playing, 25 games, up to 40 for some schools that really push it. When you talk about moving into these leagues where you're playing, we've had some summer leagues where we would play 45 to 50 games, and that's a lot of games. You're playing double headers, Saturday and Sunday, and maybe a game or two during the week, and that's tough just to try and play that much. So like with these guys playing 162, when you think about the amount of work that it would take to gain that kind of size, and then to keep that size through the season, that's the part. The majority of people, if you gained weight like that and then you played baseball the entire season, you would lose weight and you would get skinnier. Because all of a sudden you're playing a cardio game for like basically every day, and you're supposed to keep this size. So but I am not somebody that's going to bash these guys, because obviously it was a saving grace for Major League Baseball, and it's embarrassing that somebody like Rob Manfred can utilize look the other way, so to say. But they obviously utilized what these guys were doing as an avenue to grow their business, and it saved Major League Baseball. It was at a really terrible spot, and all of a sudden you have this home run race. That what people don't talk about is the home run race in '98 was one. There was one race, and then you had another race basically the next few seasons over and over and over again. You had Sammy Sosa hit multiple seasons of 60 home runs. You had Bonds break the record, in 2001, 3 years later? Or 2000, so 2 or 3 years later. So you have a home run record that stood for 37 years. So it's pretty amazing that you have a home run record that stood for 37 years, and it was broke, and not just broke, it was annihilated, right? To go from 61 to 70 is a huge jump. And then for someone to come in and break it immediately after, within the next few years, and hit 73, the bummer of it is that like people talk about Mark McGwire, and the reality is that he is probably the only one on my list that probably wouldn't have been a Hall of Famer.
Agreed. And McGwire fanboys will say the home runs and this and that, but that's all he did. He didn't hit for average. He didn't do anything defensively. He just hit home runs. Yeah. But he's compared to everyone else who hit that many home runs, he doesn't hold up to me. So a lot the Oakland and the Cardinals people are gonna hate our guts for that and say we're biased and whatever. But I mean, it's a fact. Sorry, don't be
He's
upset about
probably
it.
the only one on my list that wouldn't have gotten into the Hall of Fame anyway. Like A-Rod, Barry Bonds, Sosa is questionable because he was a 30 to 40 home run guy before, and but the problem was that he was probably like a 265 to 275 hitter, and when he was able to focus down a little bit more and understand his abilities a little bit better, he still led the league in strikeouts, right? But just cutting down that little bit made a huge difference, and he was able to hit 300 those 2 years. But that was the thing with McGwire is even while hitting all those home runs, he still hit like shit and had a terrible batting average.
Yeah, it's
So
just fucking home runs or nothing.
right, so like that, and Sosa was able to steal bases, and like you said, he was a good fielder, had a great arm.
It's weird
It's a
that we're
little
getting to this point, but if anyone doesn't remember this, I don't know if it's ever happened to anybody else in the history of baseball. So we're talking about the history of baseball. The Arizona Diamondbacks walked Barry Bonds with the bases loaded in the ninth inning of a baseball game. That happened. Barry Bonds was that good. He was that horrifying. He was that prolific. He was that absolutely unstoppable that the Diamondbacks were willing to concede a run to him and the Giants just so they didn't have to pitch to him, just so they could pitch to the guy behind him. They wanted nothing to do with that man. And that's the guy that the writers go, no, he wasn't good enough. That's what they're saying. They said he wasn't good enough. It's not they're saying he did steroids and amphetamines, which are both proven to be true. Everybody was doing that shit. So you're literally saying he wasn't good enough while Buck Showalter, I believe, was the manager of the Diamondbacks at the time. Was a respectable guy. He's been around baseball forever. That guy said, man, we're not losing the game to Barry. Not today. Nope. No way. But no, he's not good enough. That's what the writers will tell you. The writers go, he wasn't good enough. What? I don't understand. That's what sucks. That's how the overall resolution ends is nobody understands. Nobody likes it, nobody understands, and they don't have to make anything public. so I don't know. I don't know. That's what sucks. The end of everything we talk about. It's an hour and 40 some odd minutes now, and all I have is I don't know.
Yeah, it's at some point, if they don't, like I said, they need to address it. The Baseball Writers Association needs to address it and give them a more clear understanding of what the hell goes into their thinking when they're voting on this stuff. But it's going to diminish the value of being in the Hall of Fame. And it's a bummer that that's where it'll go, but that's where it'll go. When all of a sudden the Hall of Fame isn't the best players of an era, then what is the value of being in the Hall of Fame at that point?
Exactly. It's not the hall of mediocrity. It's not the hall of above average. It's not the hall of good. It's not the hall of popularity. I don't. It's the Hall of Fame. It's exactly what you said. It's the best players of those eras. They need to be in. I don't care how they got there. I don't care what they did. I don't care. Everybody else was doing it. They're just the highest profile people to get caught. Humans want an advantage. It's human nature to get an advantage, to perform better. Because not only that, some of those people were doing it just so they could keep their fucking jobs. And you don't even talk about those guys because they were just such absolute afterthoughts in the big picture of baseball. We don't even recognize those individuals who were doing everything under the sun just so they could get a crack at being on a big league team. We're only talking about the people that are getting shunned at the end of their career. These guys have long been forgotten about. You can't tell me those guys weren't doing everything in their power too, because they had to keep up with those guys who were already superstars without it. They were just adding on, with a little extra sauce, So the average person, the average big leaguer was like, shit, no, what do we do? They're making us look terrible hitting 70 home runs. Fuck, nobody hits 70 home runs. That's what they're saying right now. I'm never going to hit 70. They're never going to pay me. I can't hit 70 home runs. And then pitchers are a whole nother thing. Like, how do you even, like what does a pitcher do that alerts you to even suspect that he's on steroids? Like, how do you even, you know what I mean? There's the home runs let the cat out of the bag. But I don't know, It's hard saying. If somebody was like, "Hey, we're gonna have a steroids problem. Could you guys just keep it in the park for a few weeks?" What are you doing? Like, fuck no, we're hitting home runs, son. We got records to break. These records ain't gonna break themselves. We gotta fucking smash our way into the Hall of Fame, and then the writers are like, not so fast. You said that thing after that one game that one time 27 years ago, and I didn't like the tone you had, so now I will never vote for you because I'm an official baseball writer.
It's so fucking stupid.
Yep.
I feel like the Veterans Committee is going to put those guys in, and then at that point, maybe you see the Baseball Writers Association start treating those guys a little bit better in the voting.
Or just get some of them fucking old, decrepit motherfuckers out of there. Like, that's the same thing. That's the same way I feel about politicians, though. I feel like after a certain age, you're no longer... And I don't mean to get political. This is just general. This isn't left, right, or center. After a certain age, I don't feel like you're no longer the best interest of our future. Whatever that is, government, federal, local, whatever scale that is. At a certain point, the same thing with judges. At a certain point, you should have to take some sort of cognitive, functional test to keep your position, no matter what that is. Because once you start losing functions of your brain, who are you to make decisions, especially that are going to impact people after you're no longer in those positions anymore? I don't like any of that. I don't like any of it with the writers and all of that. Like, who are these writers? How old are they? Like, are they 100? Are they 10 years means they had to been covered. So at minimum, they're 28 at minimum, and I doubt any of them are that young. So how old are these guys? And does their brain work right? Like, there's no qualifications. You have to fill out a fucking form after you cover baseball for 10 years. So in 10 years, when Pav and I are still doing this podcast for all 200 people that watch us, shout out to all 200 of you people. Let us know what you think down below on Twitter at UG Runaround Pod on Twitter. Let us know what you think of the episode. Where do we go from there? Like, they don't have 10 years. Pav and I will be letting everybody in the Hall of Fame, and we'll tell you. I'll share my ballot with you, because that's the only requirement. There's nothing that says after 10 years of doing this podcast talking about baseball that Pav and I, we're covering baseball. We're eligible, baby. Let us in. But there's going to be assholes from 10 years from now that remember this podcast and going to be like, oh, we ain't letting you guys in.
I think, again, I really feel that, like, once the Veteran Committee votes one of those guys in, that you'll start to see the Baseball Writers Association taking a more lenient. How long now before the Veterans Committee will be voting on those guys? I think that might actually be pretty quick. But I think Bonds could get in on his first year of eligibility through the Veterans Committee. Same with Roger Clemens. You're talking about Barry Bonds is not tied number 1 all time for wins above replacement with Babe Ruth, and Roger Clemens is number 3 all time wins above replacement, trailing only Cy Young and Walter Johnston. So I mean, you're talking about 2 of the greatest pitchers from an era when pitching stats were juiced up themselves. So like Roger Clemens, when you talk about modern era pitchers, it's Roger Clemens and Greg Maddux in terms of statistically being the top guys. That you have Maddux and Clemens, not 1 and 2 for wins for a modern era pitcher. And Clemens had a strikeout ability that Maddux didn't have. So I mean, for him to have that WAR, it's pretty obvious that he was probably the best pitcher of the modern era, and he is not in the Hall of Fame. So it's pretty embarrassing. And to think, like you were saying earlier, not only how can you test and know what kind of thing can you see to say, hey, maybe that pitcher's taking steroids? What kind of real improvement would those guys get from steroids other than recovery time? And for him, Andy Pettitte, the same thing. I think both of them, that was their excuse for when they did test positive was, hey, this was a recovery thing. It's not about performance. It's about my ability to get back on the field and play the next game. To be honest, I think that's probably what it was for those guys. Because if I go take steroids, I don't think I'll be throwing 90 tomorrow. I don't think that's going to help me get there. It's pretty crazy. But it'll be interesting to see when the Veterans Committee does vote for the first time, because I really think that Bonds and Clemens are both first ballot Veterans Committee votes.
I think that actually happens this upcoming December. What I'm reading right now, it says the next winter meetings in 2022, whoever those 16 veterans are, says the today's game committee shall refer to the electorate that considers retired Major League Baseball players no longer eligible by the Baseball Writers Association of America, along with managers, umpires, and executives whose greatest contributions from the game were realized from the 1988 to 2016 era. So guess what? Players will no longer be eligible on the Baseball Writers election, but also had their greatest contributions from 88 to 2016. Yep, Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, and Sosa.
Yeah. I wonder if Schilling gets in on the first Veterans Committee. I think he should have gotten into the Hall of Fame. It's really embarrassing for his whole thing, because he's not even tied to PED use or any of that. So that's not even, they can't even say that's the reason. The reason is because they hate the guy.
Yeah, they just hate him.
Politics. So it's that has nothing to do with baseball. So I don't understand how that can affect people voting for him, other than these people had a personal grudge against the guy. So it's pretty terrible that something like that can keep you out of the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, but that's what it is. It's these writers making it the Hall of Popularity and the Hall of Likability rather than the Hall of fucking Fame, which is what it's supposed to be. And that's why it's so upsetting, and that's why we had to do a podcast just on this, even though we knew we weren't going to come to a resolution. We're not the greatest of experts, but we're thinking what I believe a majority of people are thinking, and that's why I have no problem doing this episode. And like I said, if this reaches anybody important, any baseball writer, but this is literally an open invitation. You can hit us up on Twitter. There's contact information. You get a hold of us. We'll get you on here. If you have something you want to say or something you want to educate us on or something we need to know that we're missing, because I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong, but you guys should not be afraid to admit that you're wrong too. And it's not all of you, but it's enough of you to where literally all these social media pages, the major leagues, the Hall of Fame social media pages, it's a mockery right now. It's an absolute mockery. It's because of the sham system you guys have turned us into, and it's not okay. Be better. How does Alex Rodriguez get employed by ESPN, but you can't even put him in the Hall of Fame? It's like I said, I think he's 4th all time in RBIs or something like that. He's crazy. Home runs are all the way up. I mean, I don't like him. I do not like him. He belongs in the Hall of Fame. And it shouldn't take a veterans committee way after the fact to do that. I mean, Harold Baines is the definition of Hall of mediocrity, and you let him in. So you're sacrificing the integrity of the Hall of Fame in general in terms of what it's supposed to be by some of the subjects you have in there. And then you're not even going to put the best ones in there on some bullshit moral grounds? Come on. You're telling me you never cheated to get to where you're at in your beat writing career, writing for the Mets or the fucking Blue Jays or whoever you're writing for? You're telling me you never did something to get ahead? Look in the mirror. You know what I mean? That's all I'm asking you to do. Look in the mirror before you place your next vote. If you've never done anything wrong, if you've never tried to leap over somebody to get ahead, if you've never, good for you if you've never done those things. But I'm telling you, everybody has. It might not be a big thing, and it might not have had a huge impact, and you might have done it once and felt bad about it and never did it again. But if you did it, you did it, and so did everybody else. Let them in. That's it. That's all I have, Pav. You got anything else, dude?
I think that when I think really that you could see a huge jump if in fact the Veterans Committee for Bonds and those guys takes place in December, that you're going to see a huge jump in Alex Rodriguez's votes on the next ballot. I mean, you could see it jump from like the 34% to like 60%. And right. I would bet that he would get in within a couple of years and be the first major PED positive test that we see make it through the Baseball Writers Association.
Once he's in, everybody has to go in. Everyone.
Yeah.
Because he's the biggest bust. And ESPN still parades him around TV. I mean, come on. If ESPN's okay in doing that, then they don't care about his character. And, they probably asked him, said, hey, why'd you do it? And he probably said, because I wanted to win and I wanted to be the best, which is human nature. And I'm okay with that. I mean, it is what it is. You get caught. There's no resolution, but there's a lot of problems. That's it. There's just a ton of problems. And then Rodriguez was in the 30%. He got almost 80 votes, somewhere in the 70s, I believe. He got 70-something votes. So there's already people that don't care. But then there's these other people who don't have to be accountable. I think everything should be it's checks and balances. Everyone should be accountable in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't mean that somebody should be able to come around and overturn what you did, but maybe just prevent you from being able to do it in the future. Like you said earlier, whoever voted for Pierzynski, I'm sorry, there's no such thing as a complimentary vote for the Hall of Fame. Pierzynski now gets to say, yeah, I got some votes for the Hall of Fame, but I no way on God's green earth did I ever belong there. It's ridiculous. Whoever made those 2 votes, and you could say that about a few of those guys that are at the bottom down there, but whoever, I don't know. It's not good. It's not good.
I think it's only going to keep getting more interesting, especially like the ballots that it would for next year. It's just going to get worse and worse at least for a few more years before we see anybody that we can't put in that same era of baseball and them being the best players on the list.
Let me ask you this, Pav.
Yeah.
If you got to vote for up to 10 people and your list included all of those amazing athletes we've already talked about, and then I said, hey, there's this guy who was an all-star twice in his career and won 1 Silver Slugger, should he go in the Hall of Fame? And you vote yes, you should never be allowed to vote again. And those are the 2 people that voted for AJ Pierzynski. And what, 2 times you were an all-star? Fucking Brian LaHare, or whatever his name was, for the Cubs. You remember him?
Yeah.
He was an all-star 1 time. He had 2 good months of professional baseball in his entire life, and he made an all-star game. So you're telling me a guy who went to the all-star game twice and won 1 Silver Slugger is Hall of Fame worthy? Like, how like, the ballot should have traps on it too. Like, if you vote for that guy, we know you're incompetent. You're done. Like, it's that simple, because that's just unacceptable. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but there's no opinions in who are the greatest. That's numbers. That's facts. That's real data. Whether you like the guy or not doesn't matter. It does not matter. I think you're just living in a world where people like myself and adults like me have grown up in a more culturally diverse world, and we're away from a lot of bullshit. So I feel like we're able to see things a little bit more objectively. Whoever voted for Pierzynski is an idiot. All 2 of you are absolute idiots. And I love to say that because I hate the White Sox. But the proof is in the data. It doesn't matter that I don't like him. He sucked. I mean, he was good. He was a good ball player, but he's not Hall of Fame worthy, is what I mean. I don't wish anybody to suck, but people do suck. I don't like him. Barrett squared him up good, knocked his chin off him. He kissed Ozzie. I mean, whatever. But I don't like Barry Bonds more. You know, so he was just crushing everybody, and he belongs in 100%. So, Pat, that's all I gotta say, buddy. Is there anything else? Say we wrap this thing up.
Scott Rowland should be a Hall of Famer. Billy Wagner should be a Hall of Famer.
Billy Wagner has a great signature, for anybody who doesn't know. He used to sign a lot of cards back in the day. He doesn't sign anything new that I've seen in quite some time. But for the hobby guys watching, Billy Wagner, great signature. Shout out to Billy Wagner.
I think he'll make a push before but I think he'll get a lot of help because of Lee Smith, who should have been a Hall of Famer before. And I think, but I think those 2 guys should probably get in. And obviously, David Ortiz, Barry Bonds, Clemens, Schilling should all be in the Hall of Fame. And I think, obviously, Alex Rodriguez, Gary Sheffield, Manny Ramirez, Sami Sosa.
Manny Ramirez is another guy not on the ballot, but we didn't talk about it all. But he failed, right? On the Dodgers when Manny Wood was going nuts. Yeah. So I mean, he's another guy who got caught, but he's fantastic. That dude hit a curveball against the Cubs in like 2008 in the playoffs. The Dodgers swept the Cubs. But he hit a curveball that was literally 2 inches off the plate, just 490 feet into left center field in Dodger Stadium at night. I mean, that guy could hit. Holy cow, Manny Ramirez is amazing. Absolutely amazing. So a guy like that, you're telling me, I don't even know what Manny Ramirez's career stats look like. I just know that guy was awesome. So I'm
going to 996 OPS.
Yeah, holy shit.
Yeah.
That dude hit. Absolutely hit. So what are we looking at? 312 batting average. A WAR of almost 70. 555 home runs. I don't care how many times that dude cheated. Let him in. A 411 career on base percentage. Yeah, that's a Hall of Famer, dude. I don't care what he did. It was prolific. Absolutely prolific. And guess what? He did a ton of that damage before he ever even failed the steroid test. So you don't know how long he was doing it beforehand, but he didn't go to the Dodgers until he was 36 years old. I'd be taking steroids to stay relevant at 36 too, if I had that type of legacy to uphold. Because look at the guy; it was just ridiculous. He hit 396 for the Dodgers in those 53 games in 2008. Prolific. That was Manny Wood at its finest.
People won't like to talk about it, but dude, he was good. Jesus,
he's just the guy that got caught. How many nobodies didn't get caught? Not that that's relevant to the Hall of Fame conversation, but it is, because everybody's doing it because humans want to have an advantage. I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll continue to say it because it's a fact. And if you don't think that way, then you obviously don't know how to compete. I'm going to do it fair and square, golly gee, I'm going to be the best. No, everybody's fucking cheating. Everybody's cheating, or they're trying to find a way to cheat when you're at the highest of levels. I'm not at that type of level. I don't need to cheat. I work out and shit. I don't even want to take steroids because they're not good for my health. I just want to be healthy at this point in my life. I got 2 little kids. I want to be running around the backyard with them or whatever we're doing. But for those guys where it's all about performance and winning and success, yes, absolutely. They're at least thinking about it, So,
yeah.
You might get in a slump. One 1 for 30 slump might change your opinion on that. You know what I mean? Maybe if I just do this, I can snap out of it. Because there's nothing worse than going through a slump in baseball. Oh my goodness, that's bad. That's a bad place to go mentally. I've got nothing else though. I feel like we're just gonna beat a dead horse at this point.
Yeah,
it sucks. There's no resolution. I agree with everybody you said should get in the Hall of Fame, including Manny Ramirez. Especially after revisiting his stats. I didn't look at any of that prior to doing this episode. But man, friends, I'm telling you guys, if you stuck with us till the end, get on Twitter, let us know. We have that social media page. We'll probably get a Facebook group eventually. Some Instagram action for you guys to interact with us. Let us know what you think. The downloads on the audio.
Send me your hate mail.
Yeah, send it all to Pav Daddy on the Griffey. Ooh. I don't even know this guy. He's over there. See, I don't even know where he's at. Talking about Griffey.
Dude, one of the great's players that ever lived.
He's my favorite player of all time.
It doesn't change any of that for me. So,
Yeah, and he's in. What if he just came out and was like, "Yeah, I did it. I'm already in. Fuck you guys." I don't. There's no reason to do that, but yeah. So I wonder if somebody would be willing to take that black eye that's already in there that was, clean. They're like, hey, what are you doing, writers? You're all stupid.
Harold Baines.
Yeah, Harold Baines.
I wouldn't have made the Hall of Fame if I wasn't doing steroids. That would be something. One of those guys that was just like, just barely got in there. He comes out.
My goodness.
Yeah, I was popping the stuff, dude.
Yeah. But hell yeah. Well, this has been another fun episode, Pav Daddy. Like I said, I tell you guys where to find us, but now you know. We're on Twitter for now. We might get an Instagram and a Facebook running, but it's a lot to manage. So just keep pumping out the episodes. We're going to try our best to stay as weekly as possible. Anything that comes up in the meantime, we're going to we may sprinkle in extra episodes. Point is, I would like to tell the audience that we will under promise you and we'll do our best to over deliver. So
sounds good.
Everybody have a great night. Thanks for watching. I know this is an unfortunate event. I do want to say congratulations to David Ortiz. I'm happy he got in. He was an absolute joy to watch play the game of baseball. I don't think he should have been a first ballot. That doesn't matter though, honestly, because I would have voted for him. So
right.
I say I don't think he should have been a first ballot, but that's a stupid argument to make because you either think he's good enough or not. What does it matter if he didn't get in? Like, why does it take 7 ballots, 7 years of voting to get you in? Like, no, you were either good enough or you weren't, and it's not a 7-year thing. I think he was good enough. I really do, even being a DH and doing all of that. But the unfortunate thing is everybody who didn't get in is the big black cloud over his celebration. So I know he doesn't give a shit. He's celebrating. He's having a good time. Good for him. And he deserves to do so, especially after that fucking shooting. He got shot not too long ago and recovered and all of that. Oh, my God. Poor guy. The poor guy was supposed to be having fun in retirement and is fighting for his life. So he made a full recovery to the best of my knowledge. And we wish none of these guys nothing but the best. But we just want to know what's going on because there's no resolutions to any of this. And all we have is some very minor requirements on what it takes to be a guy that makes the decision. So thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out on Twitter. Everybody have a great night. And we'll see you guys later.
Peace.
Peace.